Okay.
Hey.
Yeah, let's take a look. Morning. We're on Ayin Dalet on the base. Turn back one page. Oh, thank you. Is this here? Ayin is on. Okay. Sorry. Beautiful. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And in the midst of our learning, we have the base of English. Where are you, Yitzi? Are you on the plane now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very nice. Now you can do what Moshe does. You hear in the background, put on your seatbelts and okay. We're going to start today, Ayin Dalet Amud Beis, 74b. We're up to the words, Ela Amar Rab Nassan Bar Hoshia Hachikamar. What is that, 15 lines from the top or something? It's towards the middle of the page, a little above the middle of the page. Let me go back over just what's going on over here so we can have some understanding. Okay. We learned in the Mishnah that anyone that's not allowed to marry into the congregation is allowed to marry each other, which meant that a mamzer or a shtuki or any of those, they can marry each other. That's what. Okay. Now the problem is we learned that already in the first Mishnah. We learned that 5 pages ago on Samach Tes. That
they can't marry just like
no, they can just marry each other. They're Jewish, but they have a prohibition, but they're allowed to marry each other. Well,
so it's interesting. It looks like they're saying that a kuti is almost like a
yeah. Wait for the kuti. The kuti is going to come at the end. Then Rabbi Yehuda says prohibits it. So we don't know what it means. Rabbi Yehuda prohibits it. And we also don't know why it has to repeat the same law that we said before. So we gave a suggestion by Rabbi Yehuda that we're talking about not anyone that's prohibited to marry into the congregation. What we're talking about is anyone that's prohibited to marry a kohen. Who would that be including? That would be including a convert. Kohen can't marry a convertess, a woman. So we're saying that according right, this is no father. No, but what we're saying here is that according to the Tanakama, a convert is allowed to marry a mamzeres. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, a convert is not allowed to marry a mamzeres. That was Rabbi Yehuda's view. And that explains the machlokes. The only problem is that the rule that we gave that anyone that can't come into the congregation of Kohanim is allowed to marry each other, which means a convert can marry a convert, can marry a mamzeres, right? The problem with that is that anyone that can't marry a kohen is allowed to marry a convert, is allowed to marry a mamzeres. The problem is that a chalal can't marry a kohen. Chalal is someone a kohen marries a divorcee. The child is called a chalal. So she can't marry a kohen, but she's not allowed to marry a mamzeres. She's a regular Jewish girl. She just can't.
Which category is she in this one that can't marry? That can only marry these other categories, or the one that can?
She can only marry a Jewish person, a regular congregation person, not a mamzeres. So, and she can't marry a Kohen either. So it doesn't match with the rule that we gave in the beginning. And we had another question on that. We said that a convert is allowed to marry a kohenes, a Jewish, a woman kohen. A convert is allowed to marry the daughter of a kohen, and that would mean that she should be allowed to gersh mutter, and he is allowed to marry a mamzeres. So the rule that anyone that's allowed to marry, that's not allowed to marry a kohen, is allowed to marry a mamzeres, doesn't fit. because that would imply that someone that can marry a kohen cannot marry a mamzeres. And here we see that the opposite. He can yes marry a kohen and can also marry a mamzeres by the convert. So this is where we're holding. Elam Rab Nasan Bar Haishi. We're looking for the pshat in the Mishnah, pshat in the Tanakama. We're looking for pshat in Rabbi Yehuda that says that it's also. You know what a mamzeres is, right? Mamzeres is let's say a married woman that lives with another man. They have a child. That child is a mamzeres. Is a mamzer, and a mamzer can't marry into the regular Jewish person. It's to marry only another mamzer or a convert. Okay, so Elam Rab Nasan Bar Haishi Achi Kamar. This is what it's saying. Kol shekayin asar lisa es bitai. We're going back to the Mishnah. If the Kohen cannot marry the daughter, if a Kohen cannot marry the daughter of this person, so then that person is allowed to marry a mamzer. That's the way of judging what the status of this person is. Could the Kohen marry his daughter? So what would that be?
What's the status of the daughter?
Well, right now we're not sure what we're talking about. But what would that be? Who would that be? Well, ger shenasa gieres. We're talking about a convert that marries another convert. Two converts get married, and there's an opinion that holds Rabbi Eliezer, that says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's view, that says that says that a convert that marries a woman convert, that the child from that is not allowed to marry a Kohen. You see, normally we would assume like this, that if a convert marries a Jewish girl, the child can marry a Kohen. Yeah.
The male Kohen is married. Convert.
A male convert now is marrying a
Kohenes?
Or whoever. If a male convert marries a female convert.
You have a new participant here.
What is that? Oh. Then very nice. Then the child, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, cannot marry a Kohen. The girl from such a union.
Who's the Kohen in this?
The Kohen is going to be the future son-in-law. But according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, they can't get married. So what we're looking at not is at the daughter. We're looking at that. We're looking now. We go back to the parents and we say anyone that the daughter would not have been allowed to marry a Kohen, the parent of that is allowed to marry a mamzer.
This is a halal. It says the priest may not marry his daughter. I mean, no one can marry.
Why? It's a convert with a convert. The daughter is allowed to marry anyone.
That's the priest's daughter.
No, not the priest's daughter. The convert and the convert's daughter. They have a daughter. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, a priest can't marry that daughter. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Okay, well, we're saying that if that's the case, if he can't marry the daughter, then the father is allowed to marry a mamzeres. The Gemara asks, "Uklalahu, is that really a rule? The kol shekayin asa lisa spitai. If a Kohen can't marry the daughter mutar and lavi zebazeh, they're allowed to marry a mamzeres. It's not true because v'reichol shenasa bas Yisrael. What happens if there's a chalal? Chalal is someone that was born from a union with a Kohen, and let's say a divorcee, right? That child, it's a regular Jewish person, a Jewish boy. He's not a Kohen because his mother was a divorcee. But if he marries a Jewish girl, what's going to be the rule with the child? The Kohen asali sabita. The Kohen can't marry his daughter because she's the rule of halal continues on to the next generation. It gets passed on. The child's a halal. What do you mean? No, if a Kohen marries a divorcee, the child is a halal. Okay. Now that halal marries a regular Jewish girl, which is no problem. What's the child? Also a halal.
So that's the grandchild.
Yeah, of the prohibited union. But the problem of chalal continues on.
Yeah,
There's also a chalal. Okay. Now the chalal is not the only one law that the chalal has is that a Kohen can't marry the daughter. Right? That's the only rule. Okay, so if a Kohen can't marry the daughter, according to the rule that we're saying in the Mishnah, anyone that the Kohen can't marry the daughter, the father is allowed to marry a mamzeres. That's what Rav Nosson Bar Hoshi is explaining. So 1 second, the father is allowed to marry a mamzeres. That's not true, because Basur and Lavid is Ebezeh. The Kohen is not allowed to marry the daughter, and the father is not allowed to marry a mamzeres. So it doesn't fit with it. It's exactly doesn't fit with the Mishnah. The Gemara says like Kasha, that's not a problem because we're following the Reb Distoi ben Yehuda. We're following the opinion of Reb Distoi ben Yehuda. Now, Reb Distoi ben Yehuda, he takes this the opposite way. He says that if a chalal marries a Jewish girl, the child of that becomes not a chalal. So a Kohen can marry the daughter. So now, can the father marry a mamzeres? The answer is no, because a Kohen can marry the daughter. It fits perfectly. Anyone that the Kohen can marry the daughter, the father is not allowed to marry a mamzeres.
A mamzer is stronger than a chalal.
For sure. No one can marry a mamzer.
Yeah, so that's
No one.
No one from the community, except a convert or another mamzer.
Except whatever's listed at the Mishnah.
Right.
I thought you said that a Kohen married a mamzer.
No. Do you want me to go over? You got what's going on?
I get the first
part. Let me just explain. If you look at the Mishnah says anyone that's prohibited to marry into the congregation, which is a list of a bunch of people, a mamzer and a shtuki and a sufi and certain converts who are not allowed to marry, they're allowed to marry each other. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. And Rabbi Yehuda says no. We're trying to figure out what Rabbi Yehuda is saying and what's
he's making another case.
1 second. Rabbi Yehuda says no. And we're trying to figure out what Rabbi Yehuda means, and we're trying to figure out what the Tanakama means, because we already had that case before. So we came up now with an interpretation that what the Tanakama means is not anyone that's not allowed to marry into the congregation. We're talking about anyone that the Kohen can't marry the daughter. That's our new rule here. If the Kohen can't marry the daughter, that sets a status for the father. And now we're challenging that. What would be an example of if Kohen can't marry the daughter? We're saying that if two converts get married, the child of that union, the two converts, a Kohen is not allowed to marry.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're saying that child, not that child, those parents are allowed to marry a mamzer. Okay, right? Those parents are allowed to marry a mamzer.
I mean, a Kohen can marry a convert.
No, a Kohen cannot marry a convert. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's the one piece you're missing. Kohen can't marry a convert. Okay. So now we're saying that we're following the view of Rabbi Yehuda ben Dustoi, Rabbi Dustoi ben Yehuda. I'm sorry, Rabbi Dustoi ben Yehuda, that holds that a chalal that marries a Jewish girl, the child from that is purified, and there's not a chalal. Okay. Gemara says 1 second. But let's say a chalal marries a chalala, right? How did this happen? Two kayanim married divorcees. One has a boy, one has a girl. They get married. This boy and girl, they're both a chalal with a chalala. The child from that is not allowed to marry a kayan. Kayan asalisa bita, even according to Reb Destoi ben Yehuda. Vasanami lavis ebezeh. And a chalal cannot marry a mamzer.
Chalal was born from
the union of a Kohen with a divorcee.
And also
correct. That would be the same thing. Okay. So the Gemara says Vasu, and we have another question. Mutter aser. This would mean that if the Kohen is permissible to marry the daughter, then the father is aser to marry a mamzer. Problem is, very Gershon Asabas Yisrael. Let's say there's a convert that marries a Jewish woman. Kohen matalisa bita, the Kohen is allowed to marry the daughter of that union, right? The daughter of a convert is mutter to a Kohen, unless it's Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov and it's two converts. But right, otherwise it's mutter to a Kohen, and the father is mutter from mamzeres, mutter lavis ebezeh, and the father is allowed to marry. a mamzeres. Why? Because he's a ger. A ger is mutter to mamzeres. Sorry, the kid is going to be a mamzer, right? But nevertheless, the permissibility is there. It doesn't fit with the rule of the Mishnah. Elam Rav Nachman bar Amar Rabba bar Avur. Rav Nachman says the name of his father-in-law, Rabba bar Avur. So we're really having trouble figuring out what the case of the Mishnah is and what Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on. So we wanted to say that it all has to do with a convert, because we knew Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that a convert is prohibited, according to Rabbi Yehuda, to marry a mamzeres, and that we knew that there's another opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Here we were saying it's a Tanakama, that a convert is allowed to marry a mamzeres. So that was like the easy answer. Problem is that we couldn't fit it in with, after two tries, Rabbi Yehuda's try and Reb Nassim bar Oshiyah's try, we couldn't fit it into the Mishnah. So now we take another approach by Rav Nachman, and he says we're dealing with a mamzer. There's two types of mamzer. Could be a mamzer where a man marries his sister, and they have a child. That child is a mamzer. There could be a mamzer of a man marries or lives with a woman that's married, an Eishes Ish. That child is also a mamzer. Now the difference between them is that if a man marries his sister, the prohibition is kares. If he marries a married woman, the prohibition is skila, right? Mrs. Bezdin gets killed in court. That's much more severe. Now, do both of them create mamzer? So the Tanakama holds yes. It goes like this. It could be now. Tanakama savar afila mamzer me'achaysin nami havi mamzer. If someone marries his sister and from that union there's a child that's a regular mamzer and can marry any other mamzer, right? A mamzer is mutter to marry a mamzer. Rabbi Yehuda savar me'ishis havi mamzer me'achaysin le'havi mamzer. And Rabbi Yehuda prohibits it. Why? Because he holds that there's only one type of mamzer, the mamzer that marries a married woman, and not a mamzer that marries his sister, because that's only kares. That's not a real mamzer. So therefore, what Rabbi Yehuda is saying is that a mamzer from someone that married his sister, that from that union like that, and wants to marry, it's Jewish, wants to marry a mamzer from a married woman, that's prohibited, because one of them is a real mamzer and one isn't. And a mamzer can marry a mamzer, but this isn't a real mamzer.
What is that?
Really?
What's the status of that child?
They could still call someone by this name and they'll get insulted.
According to Rabbi Yehuda, right? What's the status of that?
Of the child is considered not a mamzer. Yeah, it's incest, but it's not a mamzer. There's probably something wrong, but it's not it can that
he's not a
that,
normal kid.
That child can marry a regular Jew, according to yeah. Gemara is now a little surprised.
So they don't have the same, besides that, same status.
We're saying now that according to Rabbi Yehuda, they don't have the same status, and according to the Tanakama, yes. Yes. Yeah.
They can marry a Kohen?
Marry a Kohen. Could be yes.
Just a title, that's all.
Yeah. So 1 second, I'm not sure if they can marry a Kohen. I gotta look that up. But meanwhile, let's see. The Gemara asks, "My kamash malan, what chiddush would this Mishnah have? Tanina, we already have this Mishnah somewhere else. What is it taught? It says, Ezo mamzer. What is a mamzer? Who is a mamzer? Kol shebala yavai de Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva has a very strict opinion about who's a mamzer. He says any prohibited marriage, any negative prohibition is automatically a mamzer. And Shimon Atimani says, Kol shechayavan alav kares b'dei shemayim. Anyone that that was born from a union that would incur kares, which would mean even someone marries a sister, that would be the opinion of Tanakama. That would be Shimon Atimani. And Halacha Kidvarav, the halacha is like him. Tanakama fits perfectly now. And Rabbi Yeshua Kol Shechayavan Mrs. Bezdin. Rabbi Yeshua says anyone that has a death penalty by the court, which is now the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So we have the machlekes now, Tanakama, and Rabbi Yehuda is really a machlekes between Shimon Atimani and Rabbi Yeshua. Who's considered a mamzer? So the Gemara is asking, why do we need to have a machlekes over here between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda when it's already a machlekes before? We already have that sort of like a lema ketanoi.
It's a machlekes, still a machlekes.
No, because what they're really doing is we have exactly the same machlekes in a later generation, and we're saying, why do they have to renew this machlekes, they could just say, I hold like him and I hold like him, if they wanted to say their opinions. They don't have to like recreate the machlekes that already
They're
existed
different?
before. Sorry?
The different ones.
So it turns out that it's the same machlekes as before. So we're asking, so why do they have to repeat it?
The one the machlekes.
Oh, so it says Shimon Atimani won the previous one. It says halacha kagara, that a mamzer would be even from someone that's karas.
So who does Rabbi Yehuda follow?
Rabbi Yehuda followed the other opinion.
So Tanakh wins.
The Tanakama went. Yeah. That's correct. So because of this question, if you wanna know later, you ask. Okay. So Elama Rava changes the pshat. We're on our third pshat in the third or fourth. Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Nosson Bereshia. We're on our fourth pshat now. Rab Nachman. We're on the fourth pshat in the Mishnah, and which is Rava. He says Gera Maini Mayav Yakabenayu. Actually, the machlekes here between Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda has to do with the ger from Ammon and Mayav. Vachi Kamar, and this is what they're saying. Anyone that's not allowed to marry into the congregation. Like who? It says, Mainiu, who are they? Gera Maini Mayav. A convert from Ammon and Mayav. The rule is that Mutan Lavi Zebazeh, they can marry each other and they can marry Mamzer as well, a convert from Ammon and Mayav.
So according to Shimon Temali, somebody marries somebody.
Tell me again. Shimon Atimani was saying
Anybody that you're not allowed to get married,
with his Karis.
which is Karas is a man.
I'm saying.
So
Rabbi Kiva was the stricter one, any negative prohibition.
it's marry a non-Jew if you marry somebody.
Oh, so that's a separate machlekes if you marry a non-Jew. That's a
According
separate
to
machlekes.
Shimon.
Even according to not necessarily in Shimon Atimani itself, it's a machlekes. If a goy ve'eved habal bas Yisrael, if a blood mountain. Well, so Mutan Lavazebazet. So Ihachi my Rabbi Yehuda. So what do you mean Rabbi Yehuda prohibits it? Well, Rabbi Yehuda holds a ger cannot. Hachi kamar. Well, actually, Rabbi Yehuda held that a ger cannot marry a mamzer. Hachi kamar. Afal pish Rabbi Yehuda oiser ger b'mamzeres. What we mean is that even though Rabbi Yehuda holds that a ger is not allowed to marry a mamzeres, hanimili ger d'roi lava bakal. That's a regular ger, because that regular ger can marry a Jewish girl. So why should he marry a mamzeres? He can marry into the congregation, and he's part of the congregation. Avalgera mayni mayav. This is what Rabbi Yehuda means. A ger that's from Ammon and Mayav. Deinrei and lava bakal. That ger that's from Ammon and Mayav is allowed to marry a mamzeres. It's not Rabbi Yehuda Eiser. It's Rabbi Yehuda that normally is Eiser is now being mater. No, you can accept the ger, they just can't marry. La yavi bekal. Yeah, so what do? They have to marry amongst themselves. It'd be like another community inside the Jewish community. Sub community. Taner Rabbanan. Yeah, that seems to be the final pshat in the Mishnah, that the Tanakama holds that a ger from Ammon and Mayav is allowed to marry in the congregation, and is allowed to marry not into the congregation. It's allowed to marry a mamzeres. Sorry, it's allowed to marry a mamzeres, and Rabbi Yehuda agrees. Rabbi Yehuda Eiser means Rabbi Yehuda agrees, even though Rabbi Yehuda is normally asers, but not by Ammon and Mayav.
Just a male.
Yeah, it's only by the male, as you'll see in a moment. Yeah, Taner Rabbanan, studying in the Brisa. Then Teisha Shanim V'Yem Echad. If there's a child that's 9 years in a day, a boy, that's the age where he can already have relations. Not have that's the age when his relations are considered relations. He's already mature enough that his relations are counted. So, and he is a ger amayni mayav. This child, this 9-year-old child, is a convert from Ammon or Mayav, or a convert from Mitzri, or an Adaimi, or he's a Kuti, or he's a Nasan, or he's a Chalal, or he's a Mamzer. And he has relations, Shabo al Kehenes Valaviyav al Bas Yisrael. He has relations with a Jewish girl, Paslua. So now that girl, because she had relations with one of these people that were prohibited to marry into the congregation, she can now not eat truma and she can't marry a kohen. She's been spoiled. She's been invalidated from marrying a kohen. Rabbi Yossi says, Kol shazari pasal, paisel. If the next generation would be pasal, for example, Aman and Mayav, the next generation is Aman and Mayav. That's pasal. Kol shein zari pasal. But if the next generation would be permissible, ain't a paisel, then it doesn't invalidate a woman from marrying a kohen. Okay. So far, we don't know what he's talking about, but
It's for a Kohen, but not a Kohen Gadol.
yeah. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, Kol she'atanaisi bitai, if you can marry this person's daughter, atanaisi almanusa, you're allowed to marry this person's widow. Kol she'atanaisi bitai, if you can't marry this person's daughter, yatanaisi almanusa, you can't marry this person's widow. We really don't know what he's referring to. We don't know what the example is. He's giving us these rules. Makes it difficult without the example. Well, the Gemara is going to explain. It says, "Ma'yik bein Tanakama bein Rabbi Yossi." What's the difference between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi? Basically, the Tanakama said that one of these converts that wasn't allowed to marry into the congregation will invalidate a woman from marrying a Kohen and from Truma. Comes along Rabbi Yossi and says, if the child of this person is pasul, then he invalidates the woman. Okay, so the Gemara explains. The difference is, Rabbi Yochanan says, Mitzri Sheni Yekabenayu Shneim Lemdu Mikayin Gadol Balmana. Talking about a Mitzri Sheni. What's a Mitzri Sheni? Talking about an Egyptian person that converted. So who does he marry? Another Egyptian person that converted. Egyptian person until 3 generations can't marry in. They have a child, right? That's considered a Mitzri Sheni. That Mitzri Sheni is allowed to marry another Mitzri Sheni, but their child is allowed to marry into the congregation. So once after they convert, 2 generations after they convert, the child can already, right? But who are they marrying? Meantime, to have that child, that has to be another convert or a
whole group.
Yeah. It sounds like there was a whole community of Mitzrim that converted, and they have.
What's the status of a Jewess that marries a Gentile? That you just,
So she can't marry a Kohen after that, even if she becomes a widow from the Gentile, right? And the child from that we hold is not a mamzer. We hold the child is just a regular Jewish child. Although there is an opinion that holds that it's a mamzer, but that's not the
Why can't you marry a Kohen?
What happens is,
so she was never divorced.
I know. What happens is when a woman has relations with someone that's prohibited to her, she becomes prohibited to marry a Kohen. Yeah. That's the big problem with the Kohen. It's very hard. An older Kohen, it's very hard to find, like in the Balas Shuva world, right? To find someone that's wasn't divorced, or wasn't with someone that was prohibited or something like that. Makes it complicated.
If the Kohen had relations with the Ashes,
that doesn't.
She's prohibited from him too, right?
But that's the Ashes Ish is prohibited to the Kohen. Anybody? Well, only to the paramour. It's prohibited to the guy, to the.
Right.
She's prohibited to whoever she had relations with. Same Shasur Labala Sur Labayo.
Why do you have to wait 3 generations?
It says Adar Shlishi. It says It says Dar Shlishi Yavilem or something. Okay, so take a look at this. They learned it from a Kohen Gadol from an Almana. It goes like this. It says the Tanakama Savar. The Tanakama holds Ki Kohen Gadol Balmana, just like a Kohen Gadol that's not allowed to marry a widow. Regular Kohen is allowed to marry a widow. Kohen Gadol cannot. Ma Kohen Gadol Balmana Shabiyasi Ba'avera is not his. He has a forbidden relations, right, with this widow. Upaisalba, and he makes her forbidden from marrying another Kohen. He invalidates her. We learn this from a pasuk that besides for the child becoming a chalal, she becomes a chalala, which means that if the Kohen Gadol would die, she wouldn't be or divorce her, or die. If the Kohen Gadol would die, even though normally a widow can marry a Kohen can marry a widow, but over here not, because she becomes a halala. So we learn that from a pasuk. It says chilula, lo yichalal. Okay, so af kol shebyasi ba'avera paisel. Also, anyone that has a prohibited relations would be would pasel a woman, which means that a Mitzri Sheni, if a Mitzri Sheni, a second generation Mitzri, lives with a Jewish woman, she wouldn't be allowed to marry a Kohen, just like the Kohen Gadol that's not allowed to marry a widow. Invalidates her. So too a Mitzri Sheni that has relations with this woman invalidates her. Okay. Rabbi Yossi Savar, Rabbi Yossi holds, he Kohen Gadol Balmana. Well, no, we're going to learn from a Kohen Gadol Balmana. We'll take the same thing and we'll learn it differently. Ma Kohen Gadol Balmana Shazari Pasul. When it comes to Kohen Gadol that marries an Almana, the children of that relations is invalid. Upaisel, and he also invalidates her. Afkol Shazari Pasul Paisel. Also, anyone that the children are invalid also invalidates the woman. Lafuki Mitzri Sheni Shein Zara Pasul. This excludes a Mitzri Sheni. Why? Because the Mitzri Sheni's children are not Pasul. Mitzri Sheni the children are not Pasul. So therefore, the Mitzri Sheni should not invalidate her. Pasuk says the third generation is allowed to come in. So because Rabbi Yossi switched the rule, he says the same thing, but in a different language. That means that he's changing one little detail. The difference between Tanakam and Rabbi Yossi is a Mitzri Sheni. If the children of that offspring would be valid, that man does not invalidate a woman, according to Rabbi Yossi. Shimon ben Gamliel, he says, if you're allowed to marry the daughter, then you're allowed to marry the widow. If you can't marry the daughter, you can't marry the widow. Okay. What's the difference between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel? Ula says, the difference here is a ger from Ammon and Mayav. And both of them learned it from the Kohen Gadol Balmana. The Gemara will explain what we're talking about. But basically, from Ammon and Mayav, you're allowed to marry the daughter because it's Amayni v'lay Amaynis, Mayavi v'lay Mayavis. So Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is actually being lenient on the Ammon and Mayav, that if a ger from Ammon and Mayav live with the girl that will live with the Jewish woman, that Jewish woman is not prohibited because the daughter isn't prohibited. And Rabbi Yossi would hold no. It is prohibited. Why? Because the son from that would be pasul. So Shimon ben Gamliel looks at the daughter, and Rabbi Yossi would look at the son. Yeah, I'm sorry.
What's the status of that child from that union?
Of Ammon and Mayav?
Ammon guy.
Yeah, with the Jewish girl?
Yeah.
So the son is considered an Ammonite and a Moabite, which is prohibited to marry into the congregation. The daughter is permissible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But she's not Jewish unless she marries.
No, we're talking about that he converted. He is Jewish.
Okay.
The children are Jewish. Yeah,
So,
everyone's Jewish here.
So if they give birth to a son,
Then the son has the same status that
so,
there's restriction on his marriage and his.
Is that like a mamzer or a halal or?
It has a similar status to a mamzer because of the prohibition of the restriction. Yeah, when you go on the Shidduch website, they have to click Ammon and Mayav.
No way.
No, I'm kidding. where are you from? Ammon and Mayav, Amalek, Mamzer, and then it restricts
How do you like
who
to
it
be
matches up.
referred to? I won't just call me
Yeah.
That's interesting because I would think there's more strength when it comes from a woman because it depends if the person's a Yid or a Gentile.
Yeah, that's true.
From the woman, so
Right.
but from here,
Yeah.
from a man who's from a
Ammon.
or Moab, that determines
Right.
the whole status.
Yeah, the father's not nothing. That's what we're seeing here.
Well,
The
it's
father's
their
not
tribal
nothing.
affiliation, but in this case,
Right.
it's the whole thing altogether. It's
Right.
the whole status.
Right.
Oh.
Have you ever seen a difference between the daughter and the son?
Only
When
by
it
Ammon
comes
and
out?
Mayav. And according to one opinion, by a halal, the son is of course a halal. The daughter halala
No,
can't
no
marry a
touch.
kohen. It's not really a difference. It's not really a. Okay. So both of them learn it. This is Ula talking. Both of them learn this. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel learn it from an almana with the kohen gadol. It goes like this. The Rabbi Yossi suffer exactly what we said before. Ki kohen gadol b'almana, just like a kohen gadol with the widow. Ma kohen gadol b'almana shazari pasal, just like a kohen gadol marries a widow. The children are halalim. Upaisel, and the kohen gadol also invalidates the widow. Yeah. Of course, shazari pasal paisel. Also, anyone that the children are invalid also invalidates the woman.
Is
Okay.
their child a halala, Kohen Gadol in
Yeah.
Divorcee,
For sure. Yeah. Childhood, but the chiddush is that even the woman becomes a halala.
So she can't have truma.
She can have truma and she can't marry another kohen. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel holds kohen gadol b'almana. Now we're going to look at a kohen gadol b'almana. It's going to go like this: Ma kohen gadol b'almana shekol zari pasal. When a kohen gadol marries almana, both the son and the daughter are pasal. Of course, zari pasal. Also, anyone that the children, that all the children are pasal. Afilu nekevis, even if it's the girls. Lafuki ger amayni mayavi. This excludes the ger from the convert from Ma'amin and Mayav. The nekevis have ikshir savivakal, that the girls are permissible to marry in, and therefore he's lenient. So if you look back at this brisa, it says ben tesha shana b'yemechad, which is a ger, amen, and mayav, is would invalidate a woman. That's not true according to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. And when he goes further, it says a mitzri it also invalidates a woman. That's not true according to Reb Yossi if it's a mitzri sheni. Yeah, so Tanakh has listed all of these people, and comes along Reb Yossi argues with the mitzri one. Comes along Reb Shimon ben Gamliel argues with the amen and mayav one.
There's no concept of halala with the lady.
Okay. Amar Rav Chisda. Okay, good. Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, Hakal Maidim Balmanas Isa Shepsul Lakayan, the Kahuna. Almanas Isa is a term. This is a doughy widow. What's a doughy widow? Not that she inherited dough. A doughy widow.
A baker's wife.
This means that she was married to someone that was a suffix. So because of that suffix mamzer, whatever, because of that suffix, the relations that she had with him invalidates her for Kayan and invalidates the daughter. Okay, so it goes like this. Or actually, the daughter is a different story. It's much like this, I think. We're going to come up. So, in others, the Shaila wasn't about her parents. The Shaila is about who her husband was. So, Shepsul Lakuna, she's prohibited to marry a Kaya. Man Mekel Bahani Tanoi, who is the most lenient of the Tanoim that we had in that price? It was Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. He says that if it's a convert from Ammon and Mayav, does not invalidate a woman, right? That was Reb Shimon ben Gamliel's view, because since the daughter is permissible, so the wife is also permissible. And he said, he said that if you can marry the daughter, you can marry the woman. And if you can't marry the daughter, you can't marry the woman. Who is he really referring to? Well, who's he excluding? He's saying that because the daughter of this Almanas Isa is also puzzle, so he's saying that she's puzzle as well. Now, and that's excluding these other Tanaim. The Tanan, Hayed Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, they testified that she is kosher to marry a Kohen. Why? My time, Abi Svek Sveka, Svek Sveka Lakula. Now, yeah. We call her a Svek Sveka, and this is a strange use of the term, because the Svek Sveka is always even if this is that, even if we don't know if this is a problem, if it is a problem, then we have another doubt. Maybe that itself is not a problem or something, But here we're not saying that. We're saying there's really only one doubt. The doubt is who the husband was. But because her problem is coming as an offshoot of who the husband was, so she's called Mikayach Safek. That's what Rashi says. She's Mikayach Safek, so she's called a suffix Svek, even though there is no second suffix there. It's a different use of the term Svek, something that we don't find in other places. Okay. The next Gemara goes like this. Vadoin bevadoin mutter. We had an opinion in the Mishnah, the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, that he held that when is a mamzer allowed to marry another mamzer, that's only if they're both definitely mamzerim. But if one of them is a doubt, like a shtuki, then he can't marry a mamzer because maybe he's really not a mamzer, and only a mamzer is allowed to marry a mamzer. But this one is in a doubt. So because he's in a doubt, he can't marry a regular person. He can't marry a mamzer, according to him. Becomes very possibly can't even marry. He said he can't even marry another suffix, right? Because could be this suffix is really a mamzer, and this suffix is really not. So he doesn't allow the sfekas. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda Amar Rav says, Rav Yehuda says name of Rav. That's the most common words in Shas. Halacha karabi Elazar. Halacha karabi Elazar. Okay. Very strict on a doubt mamzer. It would be better to be a real mamzer than to be a doubt mamzer, according to this. Kiamisa kami de Shmuel.
In the case that babes are switched also.
Yeah, that would be a problem. If one of them is a mamzer, one isn't. Both be problematic. Yeah. Kiamisa kami de Shmuel. Rav Yehuda was a student of Rav. When Rav passed away, he went to study by Shmuel. And the teachings of Rav, he said over in front of Shmuel, and Shmuel would usually say, I don't get it, what does that mean? And he would argue or whatever. It says, Ki amrisa kami de Shmuel Amrali. So Shmuel said, Hillel Shaina Sari Yosanalami Babel V'Kulam Matarim Lavish Abazeh. Hillel gave us a list that there's 10 types of lineage that came up from Babel, and we have in there a Shtuki and a Nasufi, and we said that they're allowed to marry each other. And you claim that they can't marry each other. Goes against Hillel. Goes against the Stam Mishnah that we said before. The Gemara now says, "V'rami d'Rava d'Rav, v'rami d'Shmuel d'Shmuel." What just happened here contradicts another statement of Rav, and what just happened here contradicts another statement of Shmuel. Itmar, because we have a statement like this: Arusa Shebra, if there was a betrothed woman that became pregnant, usually they rush the wedding when this happens. But here, she's the betrothed woman. In other words, she's partially married, but she's not supposed to be with her fiance yet. It's just a betrothal. He just gives her the ring, and a year later they get married. Meanwhile, she's pregnant. So Rav Amar Avlad Mamzer. Rav says this is a problem. The child's a mamzer. Why is the child a mamzer? Because how'd she get pregnant? Most of the world is prohibited to her because she's already partially married. That's marriage. Can't live with anyone.
So she was betrothed to someone else and had relations.
We don't know, but all we know is that she's pregnant. And so
Is she single or not?
She's a Arusa. She's betrothed.
She's betrothed to someone else?
Yeah, to someone. Now we don't know who the person that she's pregnant from is. So we say that the child's a mamzer because the majority are prohibited to her. She can only marry one person, and we don't know if it's that guy.
So but she had a child from not the betrothed person.
We don't know who it is. We say that it's okay. Shmuel Amar Avlad Shtuki. Shmuel says, no, the child is a doubt. Maybe it's a okay. Now the Gemara explains. Rav Amar Avlad Mamzer Mutamam Mamzeres. Sounds like Rav says that the child is a mamzer and can marry a mamzeres, which means that Rav says that I take a look at a doubt case and I consider it a definite case. Shmuel Amar Avlad Shtuki. Shmuel says that I consider it a doubt case, which means V'asr b'mamzeres. It must mean that he's referring to that she can't marry a mamzeres. Now Shmuel was the one that said that a shtuki is allowed to marry a mamzeres, and Rav was the one that said that a shtuki is not allowed to marry a mamzeres. And now we're seeing that Rav is saying that a shtuki can marry a mamzeres. Shmuel's saying that a shtuki can't. It's exactly the opposite opinions of what we just had. The Gemara says, okay, we know how to resolve this. Take white out and Eipach. You switch the names. You say that Rav is really the opinion of Shmuel and Shmuel is the opinion of Rav. We mixed it up. Rav Amar Avlad Shtuki. Rav says the child is a Shtuki and therefore cannot marry a Mamzeres because he holds like Rabbi Lazar. Shmuel Amar Avlad Mamzer. Shmuel says that the child is a Mamzer, which means that he holds like Hillel, like that the other opinion. Umar says Tarti Lamali. So why do we need two cases saying the same thing? It says Stricha. If we would be talking about the case of the Mishnah, where we're not talking about an Arusa, a woman that's betrothed, we would have said the following. Here Rav says that we only follow the, what are we saying now? Rav says of Shtuki. We say that the child cannot marry a Mamzeres because Mishum Derev Ksherim Etzla. Because this is a regular single girl that is married to is permissible to any man, right? Except to a mamzer, right? It's permissible to anyone. And then there's a child, and we don't know who the father is. We don't know the father. So the child is shtuki. So Rab says that child can't marry a mamzer, a mamzeres or whatever. Why? Because the probability is that this child is kosher. Because the woman, the mother could have been with anyone, 99% of the world is permissible to, even if they're married men, because it can have two wives. It would only be those few mamzerim or whatever that are prohibited. Aval Hassam, but in the case of the Aras, the Raif Psulam Etzla, that most people are prohibited to her. Why? Because she only has one person that's permissible to her, which is the Aras, her fiance, right? That's the only one person. So majority people with her are, so Ema Maidul Shmuel, we would say that the child can marry a mamzeres, because the odds are that it's no good. And so therefore, if it's no good, then he can marry another no good. Right? And if it would say, that's what I would have thought. So that's why I have to say it in both cases. And if it only say in the case with the Aras, over there I would say, Mishum di I could have had the thoughts like this, Jonathan. I could have said that who made her pregnant? How is she pregnant? It must be from her fiance, from the betrothed. So okay, so that's why over there we would say that she's prohibited to marry, that the child's prohibited to marry a mamzeres because it's probably kosher. Abel Baha, but if it's just a regular girl that doesn't have an aras, someone that she's betrothed to, in Meidl Shmuel, let's say that maybe she's prohibited. We don't know who it is. So in other words, it's logic both ways, so we have to say it twice. If you want, we could say that you don't have to switch the words around. My mom said to come up. So why did Rav say that the child from the aras? The Rav said that the child is a mamzer. What did he mean? We thought it meant that he can marry a mamzeres. Lav mutter b'mamzeres. It doesn't mean that he's allowed to marry a mamzeres, because Rav holds that a suffix is not allowed to marry a mamzeres. What I mean is eladasa bas Yisrael. You can't marry a regular Jewish girl. That's what we mean. The suffix. Shmuel Amar Avlad Shtuki. Shmuel says the child is a Shtuki. The Aser b'bas Yisrael, that we mean that it's Aser to marry a regular Jewish girl. But both of them would hold, well, it doesn't say what Shmuel would hold. Shmuel would hold that it's mutter b'mamzeres. Shmuel hold mutter b'mamzeres. Now, what did Rav hold? Is it mutter b'mamzeres? Rav would hold. We don't switch it around, then Rav says,
States the offspring of the shtuki, as it is most recently described.
Yeah, that was in the case before, but now we're saying that when we say the term Rav says mamzeres means that she can't marry a bas Yisrael. That Rav says the mamzer means that she can't marry a Jewish girl, and when Shmuel says shtuki means that he can't marry a Jewish girl. The Gemara asks the hachiyana de Rav. So then why do you make it look like a machlekes if they're both saying the same thing? They both mean that she can't marry a Jewish girl. Elamai shtuki. What does it mean shtuki? Shemashat kanai midin kuna, that we don't let her marry a kayan. Which means if the aras would have been a kayan, right? She's betrothed, and he's a kayan, and now we don't know who she was with. So we say that that the child, the child of that now she's pregnant, that child is prohibited to a kohen. Okay.
You had a mamzer, like an David, mamzer, David Yehudi mamzer. After he goes free or something, can you marry anyone? Is there like a loophole there, or
If you had an Eved, though.
David mamzer?
No, but Eved is not a mamzer. An Eved is
You
an
could have
Eved.
you
Eved
could
is
have
not
an
Jewish.
David Ivri, you could have an
Oh, but an
David
Eved Ivri is nothing. Eved Ivri is just a regular Jew.
You
Yeah.
have an
An Eved Kanani means a non-Jewish slave, then that we don't have mamzerim by the non-Jews. When they convert,
mamzer
there's
could still be an David.
an Eved Ivri.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't affect any lineage things. The Gemara says Pshita. What do you mean you can't marry a Kohen? We can't even marry a regular Jew. The child's a shtuki. What we mean is that we silence him from getting the inheritance of the Oris, because we don't know if it was really the Oris that made her that she's pregnant from. The Gemara says Pshita. Of course, he can't get the inheritance. We don't know who the father is. We're talking about where he grabbed the inheritance, that we take it away from him. Yeah, usually if there's a doubt about inheritance and the person grabs it, we leave it. Over here, we take it away. What does it mean, shtuki? Beduki. It means that we cross-examine the mother. If the mother says that she was with a kosher person, then we believe her. Come on, who holds that? Who holds that we trust the woman that when we ask her who was the father of this child? Rabban Gamliel, that's Rabban Gamliel. 1 second. Shmuel already said that we go like Rabban Gamliel. If you see a girl is pregnant, and you ask her, how did this come about? You know, what happened? It says, Mish Pliny V'Kayinu. She says the man was a Kayan. Kayan just means he's a kosher person. Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Lazar, Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Lazar say that she's believed. Rabbi Shua Rabbi Shua says she's not believed. I'm Rabbi Shmuel, Rabban Gamliel. And Shmuel says the Allah is like Rabban Gamliel. So why do you have to tell me again the Allah is like Rabban Gamliel that we trust her? Tzricha, it's necessary. Because if it would just be from the other case, that's where, in like the case in Ksubas, we would say where most people are permissible to her. That's why we trust her. But over here, where she's a betrothed, we would say that we don't believe her. So tzricha, that's why it's necessary. Okay, I think we should leave the next brisa. That's the kutis.
Thank you.
Sunday, 6 o'clock.
Okay, so yeah, Sunday, Bezos Hashem, 6 o'clock.